Welcome to the first ever podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Bohm. Today, I'm talking to Alexis Marshall. He sings for the band Daughters, and last August debuted the first single of his solo material called Nature in Three Movements. He also writes poetry and recently released a split collection with writer Dan Darrah called Moving Windows, which was actually released by my imprint label, Secret Voice. The first edition is available now. In this episode, we discuss the formation of Alexis's bands leading up to Daughters, touring experiences, first shows, as well as finding his voice when writing. I've been a big fan of Daughters since the formation, and getting to know Alexis these last couple of years has been a joy. If you still haven't listened to their last album, You Won't Get What You Want. I can't recommend it enough. It was my favorite album of 2018. So there. This is the first ever podcast, and this is my conversation with Alexis Marshall. Enjoy. Alexis, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry.
That was me being professional. Do you like it?
That was great. Yeah, it's mildly intimidating in some strange way.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Alexis Marshall. So yeah, you're from Providence originally.
Well, I'm from New England, like just kind of generally. I moved around a lot as a kid, but I was born in like Bridgewater, Massachusetts, and I didn't move to Providence until '98, I think.
Oh, okay.
And lived there for almost 20 years. Yeah.
Was that like folks getting a new job kind of brought you there, or what?
I went there because I was a bit too, getting into punk and hardcore. I was very small, lanky, skinny, maybe frail. And Boston was a little too much of a scary scene.
Sure.
And so, I'd go to shows in Boston, but primarily we went to Rhode Island because it was sort of like the island of misfit toys where it was like a more collaborative scene where kind of everybody was shoulder to shoulder, and so I felt more comfortable there, and when I left high school and I got kicked out of high school and then had to get a job, lost my job, had nowhere to live. I moved in with John from Daughters. I lived in his basement while he finished high school for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
And we would go to shows like every weekend, and whenever we would drive to Providence. It was only, it was like 30 minutes away. We were living in the Attleboro area. John lived in Rentham. So we were so close. We were closer to Providence than Boston. So it became our scene for, a lot of reasons, and proximity was a big one, but also it was just like a little less, I think, intimidating. Yeah. And a little more like welcoming, honestly.
Were there any venues then that are still around today that you were going to in Providence? No,
everyth's gone at this point.
Yeah.
We went to a place called the Living Room, and we booked shows there as teenagers, we saw like all kinds of bands there. And that's gone. There was a place called the Safari Lounge, which was a kind of a dive bar that had shows. It wasn't equipped or built for it. The stage was, it was a decent sized bar room, but there was a strange kind of room off to the right as you went to the back, and the stage faced the wall. So you had about 6 feet of space in front of the stage before the wall. So there are a lot of, I think there's a really wild video of Lightning Bolt playing at the Safari Lounge, and that's available. You can probably find online.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just really awkward. It was such an awkward setup, but they did shows. We'd see shows there, and there was one of the bigger venues was Lupo's Heartbreak Hotel, which was a large, I don't know, like a couple thousand cap.
Damn, yeah, I haven't heard of any of these.
The Strand, there's the Strand, which is a theater, which was a bigger a capacity theater, where I saw some shows there, and I think that might still be there actually, and it might be like the only venue, like kind of independent venue left in the city, aside from like ASU 20, which is a unique place in itself. Just a bar, a show space, art gallery. They have rooms for artists upstairs, like on the second floor. People working and painting and doing whatever. I think they do a lot of programs for underprivileged kids in the city, I think, and students and like high school students. And it's a really cool place. And they've been doing, I think it's one of the oldest nonprofit kind of show spaces in the country. But I might have that wrong, but I think my wording is wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like it's the oldest one one of the oldest ones in the country that's sort of been doing available to just kind of the community and just whoever people in the city.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that's still there, but I didn't go there too often because it was probably too hip for me and John and those of us who didn't. We didn't realize it was there for a couple of years.
Okay.
But we started. So I guess there's. If the Strand is still there, then there are two spaces that I used to attend shows that are still there, but mostly everything's gone, or it's a parking lot, or it burned down or something. It's
right. So this whole I forget how much we've talked about it, but this whole show is kind of about a lot of like first experiences and things like that. So I was curious, as a young person, what was the first music that you connected to?
I have an older brother who was interested. My father wasn't particularly interested in music, and neither was my mother. I'd hear the radio. My dad liked Hank Williams and Hank Snow and Bruce Springsteen and stuff. So I was hip to that and dug that. But my brother, who's 8 or 9 years older than me, I think he might be 8 years older than me.
Okay.
This is an 85, so he's a bit older, and he's getting into skateboarding and get his, pierced in his ears and shit. And kind of got me into, he was really into DRI and Agnostic Front and Voivod, kind of the, thrash bands and some New York hardcore bands. And, but a lot of other weird shit. Like the first time I ever saw like Alice Cooper footage, my brother had a VHS copy of a performance that kind of like Welcome to My Nightmare era. They cut Alice's head off and
right,
drinking
like
the blood.
Very theatrical.
It was like really incredible. It just blew my mind. And my neighbor, who was a bit older than me as well, was into Manowar and like a metal, like kind of goofy ass metal stuff like that. So I was getting into all of that shit at the same time, and I didn't discriminate, I wasn't too cool for country music or anything. I dug a lot of the stuff like Arlo Guthrie and shit that my dad was into. And then, but got really into metal and hardcore and punk bands and probably because my brother was cool, he seemed cool anyway. In hindsight, he probably wasn't all that cool, but, it was a lot more fun to get into that like dirty, gross, shitty brand of music than it was to, I heard The Cure on the radio and that was cool, but it was Men at Work. This was the 80s and this is...
Right. And how old were you at this point?
So like 5, 6, 7. Like I got
wow. So you were interested
into that stuff
super early. Wow, that's impressive. I feel like it's usually like when you're like 12, 13 when you see the you at least feel like you're belonging to something that the other kids in your class don't understand. But the fact that you connected that early is pretty impressive. I don't
necessarily know if I was connecting or like finding a scene or anything like that, but I was really interested in the music, and I thought it was cool. It was, like I said, more. It was a lot more fun to kind of, the imagery was better, and but I got into all kinds of shit, Motley Crue and shit, like Poison. Like it was just like, this is fast and it's loud and like this is great. So I didn't care if I was listening to like when Master Puppets came out, my brother played it for me. He bought it on cassette, and I remember sitting around listening to it. It was just like, this is fucking bonkers. Like this is great. So I was just digging whatever was kind of brought to me, as long as it was loud and sort of fast and like obnoxious in some way. I gravitated toward that style of music. I remember when I first heard Death, Leprosy, when that shit came out, it was like, I was a kid and it just fucking blew my mind. Like it was, I don't know. And honestly, I don't know where the hell it was all coming from. I don't know where I was finding it, or, my neighbor, like I said, my neighbor was, at my father's house. I lived separate from, mom during the week and dad during the weekends and vacations and such. And, my father's a kid a bit older than me, and my father's neighbor was just getting into kind of metal, all kinds of metal and shit. And so I was getting all that from him, and suicidal tendencies and stuff like that from my brother. And it was great.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot of different people to sort of influence all of that. Like I was going to ask if you already kind of sort of had that built in from your older brother and now your neighbor and stuff, when you ended up, being in class with kids when you're in, elementary school, junior high and things like that, did you feel like you had your own identity already outside of kids who were probably just listening to the radio, or had that not really fully formed, that you like had this foot in with a different kind of subculture?
Yeah, I had no idea. I knew that the other kids weren't into it and they had their own shit, but like music wasn't coming up. It wasn't a conversation I was having with the kids in my school or anything like that. I had sort of two different lives where I went to school, it was, I was like, I grew up very poor, and my mother did a good job to make sure that I got into decent schools, which I failed miserably all the time across the board throughout my entire schooling, even as a kid. So I was always like the poorest kid with the knockoff shoes that were like ponies, and my clothes were ripped, and I, got myself up into school, and like I had to do all my own shit. Mm-hmm. So I think that my identity wasn't there. It was like I was just the poor kid, or the poorest kid. But on the weekends and vacations and stuff, when I was at my dad's, it was like all my friends around there were poor. Everybody's parents were addicts and alcoholics and in prison and shit. So, mm-hmm. It was totally different. And everybody there, it was like, oh, here are my people. And we listen to shitty metal and, crazy stuff goes on around us. I don't have like a good grasp on like what my childhood was, because I didn't feel like I had an identity as a kid, because I was always one person or the other, or I really had to adapt wherever I was kind of placed. And we moved a lot, so I never had friends aside from where my father was living. He kind of kept in the same place, but my mom, we're doing our best to make everything work and trying to find work and find cheap places to live, so that it was a confusing time. So I didn't think, where's my scene or where are my people? I was just like, I'm at school and everybody hates me. And then I'm at my dad's and I can like stay up all night. I don't have to like fucking change my socks for a week. So it's like, whatever, man. I was just like, just doing whatever I had to do.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. It sounds like you and I had a similar parental situation. Like I grew up with a single mom. My folks were divorced while my mom was pregnant with me. And I saw my dad like on the weekends, and it was pretty much just like, here's some pizza. I'm gonna drink this beer and I'll see you next weekend, kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like, pick me up Friday. I guess I'll see you on Sunday when you drive me back. Like, that was kind of a lot of my experience with my dad and stuff. So, but my brother was around, and I think like that's also why I kind of gravitated toward that brand of music that he was subscribing to, in a sense that I had a really good relationship with my brother, and I felt very close with him. So
that's awesome.
So that probably had some kind of impact or kind of guided me in some way. Just his preferences kind of became mine. So
does this is further down. This is like a further down the line thing. But is your brother like stoked on seeing the band come this far and all that sort of stuff? Like, does he appreciate that?
Yeah, I think he's like pretty proud of me. He'll he's like a fucking welder. He's been working. He joined the army, and then he started working on he worked on like tanks and shit in the army. Yeah. And then when he got out, he just started working on like large front end loaders and bulldozers and shit like that and whatever. And he's like, but he's a master welder or something, and like does all the stuff. Goes all over the Northeast like working on shit, and he gets called up, and he's got to like work on a bucket that's stuck in the mud, like all this crazy shit. And he'll have these pictures on his Instagram of like, just welded this whole bucket thing today. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, hey guys, just want to talk about my feelings of my new record. And so like couldn't be any more different. But we still have a good relationship. So.
Did he ever play music?
He played guitar. Like he had a guitar when I was a kid, and he would play and he would write songs. He was a skateboarder. He just looked cool, and his friends had cool names. He had a friend named Spike. And I was like, yo, I was like, Spike's cool. My brother would like go get a 6-pack of beer and like skate downtown in Norwood Center and like get drunk downtown. And I was like, my brother's fucking cool, man. And that was, he was just like everything he was into. I just wanted that. I wanted to be around him, and we, and it was a really scary and dangerous and unhealthy environment growing up. So I didn't feel safe or protected by my father. So my brother kind of wasn't necessarily parental, but was like, we kind of took care of I wouldn't say we took care of each other. He had to do all the taking care of. So,
right. He looked out for you.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of imagining this. I imagine your brother as Trent from Darrah. Like,
I don't know. I've never seen Darrah, but this is like the second reference I've heard to Darrah in like just a couple of days. So I've never watched it.
Yeah. Well, Darrah was like the
I know she's from Beavis and Butthead, right? I know she's from
right. Yeah.
Right.
She was, but like I think everyone in I think you're a couple of years older than me. I was born in '83, but like I think everyone in growing up was excited that there was this character that was like the metalhead kind of outlaw kind of cool kid with a skull on his shirt, and everyone thought he was the coolest. So it sounds like that's what I'm going to compare your brother to. Without you approving, your brother is Trent from Darrah.
Yeah, do what you like. I mean, this is your show, so
but yeah. So at what point did you start wanting to be interested in like playing music? Like when was your first band?
So, well, I was always singing. Like as a kid, I was always singing, and I used to make up words to songs. There was in the 80s, there was a big hit for that Beverly Hills Cop film.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was like an instrumental song, and I had made up my own words for that. And
that's awesome.
So I had like a tendency to do shit like that. So I was always, so when I was in junior high, I think I started writing. I started like filling notebooks with lyrics and shit like that, and all kinds of and just really bad stuff, and writing, band titles with logos and all that kind of stuff, and like making up my band's going to be like this. And I'm 12 years old, and I don't have a band or anybody gives a shit and wants to play. Nobody in my town was interested in music in any way or to any extent. So I was always like writing lyrics about the occult or something, and Satanism and like war and shit. I was like, probably listening to too much Megadeth or something, where I was like pretending to have some grasp on politics and war of the world right now. And like I didn't fucking know anything. I just like I had a bunch of Megadeth albums. Right. But so my best friend lived upstairs when I was living with my dad at one point in Norwood. My best friend was living upstairs. He was a year older than me. His name was Steve, and our parents did drugs together, or whatever was going on. So he was my best friend for the entirety of my childhood and into my teenage years for a bit. And he had some kind of coolish friends, I guess. He was living a couple towns over, and I'd hang out on the weekends when I'd see my dad and go to his house, kind of hang out for a couple days. And all his friends were into the same shit I was, like metal. And so I started playing with they had like bands. They were like dudes like in high school. They were just like guy had a drum set and played the drums, and another kid would play guitar, and he was pretty good. So they had a guy singing. This kid, Donnie Lawrence, singing, and he was not very good. And we were at a party, and they had set up their gear in a garage, and we're just playing, and Donnie wasn't there. And they're like, hey, why don't you sing? You should sing some song. We did they were doing covers, I think we did like Angel of Death by Slayer and probably like Territory by Sepultura and some shit like that. And nice. I sang, and they're like, yo, you got to sing in our band. Like, you should sing for us in our band. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
and had this like band. We never played any shows or never did anything other than we rehearsed. We bought like a PA we rented one rather from Guitar Center, or not Guitar Center. There was a Daddy's Junkie Music is a place. It's a sort of Guitar Center-esque, but a little more local to New England. Mm-hmm. And I think we like rented a PA from Daddy's, a whole setup, so we could record a demo on like a boombox. And it was a 90-minute cassette of like just covers and shit, and then
that's amazing. Do you still have that?
No, I wish that I did. I don't have it. It would be quite embarrassing. So I would never do anything with it or show it to anybody.
Of course. But just for your own sake, stuff like that, as much as it can feel cringe to exist, it's kind of always nice to know. It's like, I have it.
That shit's scary because I used to sing by myself onto a cassette recorder, and a friend when I was like 13 or 14 found one.
Oh no.
And I think he started playing once that he didn't know what it was on, and I was like, "Oh, what's this? We got to shut this off. This isn't very good." And I was like, "Oh my God, I think that's me. How did that fucking tape get out here? Did I like?" And I used to make a lot of mixtapes. I would stay up, and there was a radio show out of Emerson College called Nasty Habits in Massachusetts. And every Sunday night, it was Sunday from like 11 to 2 a.m. or 11 to 1 a.m. or 10 to 1 a.m., whatever it was. And it was hosted by this guy, Johnny Shoon and Mark Thompson, who would later become a really good friend.
Is that Mark Thompson?
Hydra Head Records, all that. Yeah. So,
yeah.
So I would record. I would just I'd try to stay up as late as I could and just record the whole show and like whatever was on. And I'd bring it to my other friends and like, "Oh, you got to check out this like Paradise Lost band. You got to check out like all this other shit." And like, "You ever heard Napalm Death? Listen to this shit." Or like crazy, like hardcore, like Black Bell, all these like weird ass, like hardcore bands out of Boston. And they had like all this cool local stuff. And it was the first time I heard like Marauder and fucking like, all kinds of Only Living Witness and all these bands that I still dig. I still listen to all that shit. So, but I would record it and try to like hit my friends to it that were like, "Well, we just kind of want to listen to this new Sepultura album. Have you heard Roots?" And I'm like, "Yo, what the fuck?" I was like, "This, like, no, man, there's real shit out here. Like, check out this Deicide record." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess." I was like, "This is not working." Which is why, like, when I met John Severson, when we went to high school together, like a year or two later, I just bumped into him. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this band with some guys." And I was like, "Yo, I want to sing in this band." Invited myself to be the singer. They already had a singer, so it was like this 2-singer thing. And then when the guys I had been playing with, Steve's friends, all these guys were pissed. They're like, "Man, you gotta choose a band to be in." I was like, "Yo, I don't have to. Why do I have to choose?" I'm like, "I'm gonna go be in a band with the dudes who know who like Dead Guy is. Like,
right.
This dude has a 25 to Life shirt. I'm gonna go hang out with him and be in a band with them because like you guys are fucking just like no idea." And they're all juggalos now. I found out like years later, they all got into like. Into Insane Clown Posse and shit, and they're townies, like they're just townies. And I'm not trying to like knock townies, but it was like they never left town. They like
sure. No,
and thankfully, like I started playing with John, these dudes, and we're like, we're gonna play shows, we're gonna write. Like we wrote our own songs, like went and played shows, and I played. It was crazy.
I'm assuming that's As the Sun Sets.
This was a band called Displaced.
Okay.
And it was myself, John, this guy Mike Johnston played bass, who's a tattoo artist and phenomenal tattoo artist, like really, really incredible. And he's just unbelievably talented. This guy Chris that we didn't know played guitar. I don't know how we had met this guy, but he paid like he kind of like was totally used, and he paid for the rent at the space and like got the room and all this shit. And we didn't like him or anything, and he didn't know anything about music, but he just like played guitar and he had the room. But myself and John and this guy John Toady was singing. John did more of a Toady did more of like a rapping style, and I had kind of this like Hatebreed style. So it was terrible. It was really bad. And I do have VHS recordings of 2 shows that we played that I still have them.
That's awesome. So okay, let me just let me just try to. So your first show would have been the first show you ever played would have been the one where you sang covers, and I'm just curious to go back to that show. When you did that, did you feel comfortable kind of in that place? Like, because obviously you'd been sort of not fantasizing, but like I guess, fantasizing about.
I was fantasizing, absolutely.
About fronting a band. You know, you've been thinking about it. You've been writing it in notebooks and writing lyrics and stuff like that. So given that opportunity, did you feel like you were in the right place doing that?
I was terrified. You know, it was, I'm a terribly insecure person still. So I wasn't any better when I was like a dumb teenager on drugs. I wasn't confident. It was sort of time to do it. I had like, you know, said it was a fantasy of mine, and it just seemed, when they asked me to sing some songs with them, it was just in a garage, you know, they were just like people standing around. It wasn't like real shit, but I
mean, most people's first shows are like talent shows at high schools and stuff, you know,
right,
it certainly was mine. So like, but I mean, regardless of what it is, you know, it's like, it's the first time you're in front of people that maybe you don't know, and you're, you know, yelling or making noise into a microphone. I mean, you know, I think that experience always lives differently in your head from when it happens to, you know, what it is now. But I was just curious if after that, you know, couple songs set, it sort of solidified, like, I think I want to do this more. Yeah,
it was a thing. I was finally brave enough to do the thing I always wanted to do, but was just too terrified. And I don't know if it was like peer pressure or some shit that was just like, hey, you gotta do it. And I had like no idea what sound was going to come out of my mouth. You know, I had no idea. I'm just like, I'm just going to do this. So I did it. But also on that, you know, I am sort of downplaying this. It's just a bunch of kids playing in a garage, but I mean, I spent years just playing in people's garages. Even the first Daughters tour. I mean, we played all kinds of basement shows. So yeah, I guess it was, I mean, sure, it was a show. Why not? Yeah.
And then you had the two. So when you were saying you had the two bands going for a minute there, it would have been that band that you did the covers with, and then the Displaced band, right?
Right. So the covers band, the covers band was called Misled.
Okay.
Misled. Check it out.
Just so you know, these are Misled and Displaced. Was it Displaced or Displaced?
Displaced.
So between those two, those are also two of the better band names for people's first bands, especially on the show, and definitely better than any of mine. Let me tell you, my band name when I was in 8th grade, the balls on us, the fucking balls on us to have our name be Victim of Atrocity.
Wow.
like what kind of atrocity did we deal with when we were in fucking 8th grade? It was the most... Like, it was just, we found the word atrocity in the dictionary and we're like, damn.
That's a cool word, yeah.
That's hard.
It's cool, yeah.
And then, so you said you had like VHS recordings. Did Dismayed ever record in an actual like demo or anything like that?
Displaced never recorded a demo, no.
Okay,
We wrote a bunch of songs, and we never wrote, I mean, the only people who really had a grasp on any of it was like John playing drums and myself singing. Not that I had a real grasp on how to sing, but I wrote my words down, you know. But our guitar player and our bass player, they never wrote anything. They didn't play the same thing. They were just sort of playing their own song.
Sure. Yeah.
And we never addressed it. We never thought that this, you know, this isn't working. We should write. So you guys got to get together and write songs. It was just the guitar player would play this, the bass player would play the other thing, and everyone will do their own shit. So it was totally disjointed and a huge mess. But it was a lot of fun, and we. We're booking shows and playing shows, and you know, it was great. It was really bad, and I'm glad it was short lived. And we realized that we wanted to do something that was more serious. That wasn't just sort of play a show here and there, and we'll eat pizza at practice and get high and like, you know, just do whatever. But you know, we wanted to be like a proper band and a real band and play shows and record and all that kind of shit.
So when that band just like broke apart, is that when you started As the Sun Sets? Was that the next band?
Yeah, essentially. So John and I, and then because everything is in music is incestuous if you break it down. The guitar player and bass player from the band I used to be in that I got kind of kicked out of, or that I left to play with John, the guitar player and bass player of that band, their band broke up where they got a new singer to replace me. Those two, guitar player and bass player, played with John and I. and we started a new band, and it was called Cast Off Skin.
Another good band name.
Right. It was a reference to the Ninja Scroll film. There was like a line from that where, and we would obsessively watch it, John and I, and like watch Ninja Scroll constantly. So we used the name. We thought that would be a cool band name. So we used that. And then eventually we changed the name to like, I think, and a couple people, guitar player left and someone else started playing guitar, and then another guy came in to play bass. And we were called, I think the Sun, we changed to The Sun Has Set. And then we did like one show under that name and then changed it to As the Sun Sets, which I guess we thought was better, but
it is. I would give you that.
Of all of them, it's a terrible name. I don't know. As the Sun Sets, just kind of a really bad name, I think. But at the time, we thought it was cool.
It's a name that I never really thought twice of, and I still don't think it's bad. But it's
very 90s. I think like
it's very 90s.
That, like,
I'll give you that.
Like that faux thoughtfulness and emotional kind of shit. Where like, because that's what we're playing metal and hardcore, but like the scene was like teeming with bands like Piebald and stuff, and like all these people who are also, and you had crossovers where people were like Mean Season or something, where like kind of playing hard music, but we're also singing. And so, we wanted to kind of convey this kind of thoughtful, doomy, romantic, aggressive thing. So As the Sun Sets, I guess, is what we thought would work. I don't know.
Sure. And so that, I'm assuming that was the first band that ended up actually doing like a demo or recording at all. Yeah.
Yeah. We started, we recorded, oh no, Cast Off Skin did have a demo, or at least one. We recorded, I don't remember if we went into a studio or we knew someone with a 4-track maybe, or maybe we rented a 4-track or something, but we did record a demo, a 3-song demo that probably a handful of people living in Providence still have.
Okay.
But I don't have it. And John actually might have one somewhere in his mom's attic or something. I don't know. But
well, I was gonna ask you, but now it might be tough considering you can't fully remember which one it was. But I was gonna ask you if you remember what your first recording experience was like. Like, I guess we could say for a studio, if you could remember the first time you actually like went to a kind of recording studio. Again, a lot of people's first experiences are like, oh, it's this dude's garage, but it felt legit to me. I get a lot of those stories.
Actually, we did record. Misled did record 2 songs in a warehouse space that a guy who he must have been living in there or something like that, but he found a like 16 track, or like it was like he had no business having this, and he found like some old recording gear, and he was a kind of junk collector or whatever, and then put it in, and we went and like recorded live, like we just recorded live, did the vocals separate, and we only had like 2 songs. So actually we did record a demo. I completely forgot about that.
Hey,
we did that, and
this is a nostalgia podcast to bring these things back.
That's wild. Like I hadn't thought about that, and so in such a very, very long time. That was probably 93 or 94 or something. So
wow, yeah.
But I guess the first, that felt real. Like we were hanging out in there, and the guy had a mixing board. It was a whole fucking thing. And I don't know how we recorded this, what the hell we did, but anyway, that's what we did. But the first,
I'm just curious, like how do you feel in recording studios at this point? Like, I mean, going from early on till now, like, do you enjoy the recording process, or is it also kind of a bag of nerves as well? Like, do you get as anxious recording as you do playing live, kind of?
No. Well, it's a totally different experience. Like playing live is just sort of second nature for me, where I don't have to prepare. Like, like I put on a suit, I get like sort of dressed up for the occasion, but I could just go play. Like I don't need to tap into something or like have some sort of a emotional experience to do it. It's sort of just, it's an extension of myself where, whatever it is I'm doing performance wise is a part of me. So I can just go and do it at any point. Recording is more of a task and kind of feels more like a job. So I've really disliked it up until this past year, where and it's not that I've disliked, making records or we've worked in Machines with Magnets for years, and it's not like I don't like the space, or I love working with Seth Manchester, who's the producer there and the engineer. And I just don't like this, like the self-scrutiny that it's like we go here and then we go here and then it's so planned out, and I find it to be kind of dull and uninteresting. Probably why I enjoy performing, because I don't have a plan. We have a set list, and then maybe I'm gonna climb the wall or something. I don't like I'm gonna do a thing or go somewhere, or like something's gonna happen, or maybe nothing's gonna happen. Like that's just to me like far more interesting than that kind of like chaos energy there of that sounds really corny, chaos energy. I don't want to say that. But like the chaotic nature, the chaotic nature of it, I guess, is sort of the unpredictability that I kind of thrive there.
Right. Whereas like recording, there's like a finality to it. Like you have to stick to whatever you're putting down, and it's going to live forever in that one take or that one.
Yeah. And there's a lot of waiting around and doing something over and over and over and over and over again. I just, I really don't care for it. But this past year I went to Machines and did a solo record, and it was a really great experience because I really tried to bring in this. I had written 20 some odd demos, and then got to Machines and thought, this is just not, I don't give a shit about any of this stuff. Like, let's just see what we can do here in the room, like everybody. And no idea is too stupid and not worth exploring. Let's just see what happens. And that's what we did. And it was, we kind of sat down. Seth was like, all right, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. I found a chain in the basement. Let me like beat it against this sheet of metal. Like, we just started pulling things together and putting things together. And it was such a great experience. I really loved it. And I've had to go back to Machines a couple of times over the course of the year to kind of finalize and work on things again. And then I just went in there a couple weeks ago and recorded 2 more songs. And for just, I don't know what we'll do with them, though. I just have them now, and re-record a couple verses that I didn't like on the record. And now the record's done. But I was like so happy to go in and do it. I was like really excited. To go to the studio, and it's a thing I'm enjoying now. And this, like I said, this is just this past year. So
I mean, that's nice that you can kind of find your own new way, I guess, with recording. Because I agree with you, and I'm with you that like overall I'm not a big fan of recording, and that again, as you just said, it's like it has nothing to do with the people you do it with or the the space or whatever. It's just it feels so final. And listening to things back can be exhausting or nerve-wracking, just being like, is it good? I can't tell, like a lot of that sort of stuff, and being very self-critical.
Yeah. I don't like, there is a good deal of anxiety, I think, that coming into it as well, that where I have to sing and everyone's looking at me and it's silent, and there's an expectation like that I have to do something that's going to work.
Sure.
So I'm just like, and a lot of the times it's like, I just want to kind of screw around with some idea, and it can be a little anxiety inducing.
Yeah, no doubt.
But that's just for me. Like, I think some people thrive there and they love that, whereas they don't want to perform live. That they're like far more uncomfortable in that space. Where I'm actually much more willing to try something I haven't done live in front of people than I am to do in the studio. I really don't feel comfortable sometimes doing things in the studio under that kind of a microscope.
I mean, it's always hard to, especially in the world we're living in right now. Like, I remember something I always took in mind a long time ago, or learning about it, was like Converge. I remember saying that most of the songs on Jane Doe that they had been playing live for like a year and a half or 2 years or something before they recorded that record. And that to me makes sense, because that, obviously that record has quite a legacy to it. And I think that has something to do with it, because like they were they were certain about those songs, you know? And I think
they honed them, they perfected them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like given the opportunity to like try all that stuff out and work it out. I mean, I can speak for myself and say that the songs that I feel pretty bad about in our catalog are the ones that I wrote in the studio last minute and were like stressed about, because it's like, I didn't figure out sort of like the swagger of like how lines can hit certain ways and stuff like that. It was sort of like, I think this is right, I'm going to do it. And then, you know, then you start playing those songs live. You're like, wow, I'm singing it differently now. I'm sure you've dealt with that too.
I do that all the time where I'll find that I'm singing a song a way that I think it is because it's evolved into that. And then I'll hear a recording and realize that, oh, that the fuck was that? That's not the same thing. I'm not singing this. I'm not singing the song correctly, apparently. Like,
right.
It's like, I don't even think about it. And it's natural. It's much more, it's got a set of lungs in a circulatory system. Like when you perform it live, like it's evolving, it's growing, like it's life. And it's not this sort of kind of sterile environment of that I feel the studio often can be, or just the process. But I mean, to your like the stuff that you don't feel well about writing. I mean, I wrote all the lyrics and got everything set up for Guest House. From You Won't Get What You Want. Like that song I wrote like half an hour before I went to record it. Like I really wasn't sure what I was doing, and I had some words written down, and then I kind of rearranged it, and then got to the, you know, I put the vocals down, and then just was sort of changing it as I was going, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. So sometimes it does work,
sure,
but other times, you know, it doesn't, and you know, you look back and like, I mean, with hindsight, everything is, oh, I should have done it this way, or it didn't work because of this. And even my analysis of it now, where I could say, yeah, I don't like the studio. It doesn't, it's such an artificial environment and what have you. And then, but at the same breath, I can say, oh, I had such a good time this past year, like working on this record. And so, you know, I'm probably full of shit. And there's this like, you know, this like Gemini status of myself where I'm like kind of all these different people feeling different ways about this one thing, and sort of depending on the moment, I might decide that this worked or this didn't work. Or
right.
My analysis of it is just, I don't know. Everything. I mean, things are skewed, and that's what time does. So
I'm curious. Go back a little bit. So like when so As the Sunsets did those 2 EPs and the full length, each individual Voice is Dead record, and I'm assuming was it a situation where like a couple members changed and then that's when the band sort of evolved into Daughters? Is that kind of the backstory?
Yeah, I mean, the band was always John and I. Like, even As the Sunset, so we had kind of a revolving cast of people. But John wrote everything. John wrote all the music for the band. I wrote Jeremy when he joined the band a couple years later. He probably wrote some things here and there. I wrote a couple songs, like in that obnoxious singer way, where because I don't play guitar and I have to say like, it goes like, yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then you just like make your car go like, Frank, can you do that? So he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, just go like, Frank. Like a guitar doesn't, it's so stupid. But, so I wrote a couple of songs like that. And, we had like a really bad experience, like with, the label who put out our record, and some of the members who were just very non-committal to the whole project and the process.
Are we talking As the Sunsets?
Yes.
Okay,
so we were in a park, and we had just finished the tour. We were driving home, and we were in like Virginia or West Virginia or North Carolina or something. And Jeremy, myself and John, we got together and said like, we're all done when we get home. Like, let's break this up and we'll do something else. The 3 of us will do something. And, we got our friend Pat to play bass. Jeremy was a bass player in Daughters. He switched to guitar. Mm-hmm. And, we started writing some songs, and Pat he had sang in, some like 90s screamo bands, that's something of mine. He was in a band called Bastion.
Okay.
He sang for Force Fed Glass. For
yeah.
Yeah. So he probably lent us credibility to some extent that we didn't have before. But so we started writing songs in his living room, Pat's living room, and then we tried out a couple guitar players, and then Nick, we got Nick, and we just from there we started writing. We wrote the 7-inch, like recorded it quick, and went on tour with. We had like 8 or 9 songs, maybe 10, and probably 10 minutes of music. And we went on tour. We did a full, like most of the U.S. We didn't get all the way out west, but it was like an East Coast, and then kind of up into Chicago, like up toward Chicago. And it must have been 2002 because that last As a Sunsets record came out in March of 2002 when he very quickly went right back out.
Okay.
I mean, we were just constantly churning on music and playing music and writing music. So it was easy when we thought, well, we'll just write a bunch of new songs and we'll record them real quick and then we'll just go out. And we had a tour offer that was supposed to be an As a Sunsets tour, I think, with Examination of the. And,
oh, shit. Nice.
Yeah. And so we did this. So they were like, oh, I guess you can't do the tour. Like, well, we started a new band. We'll just bring that band. Like, yeah, sure. Bring that. Do it with that band. And very quickly got everything together and went out. And it was such a good time.
You had the 7 inches with you already for that first.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah, I think we had them.
I don't know if I've ever blown smoke or whatever for you, but like that, over years I sort of like kicked back on collecting variants and stuff like that. But like still to this day, I think I have like 5 or 6 different versions of that.
I'll
first daughter 7-inch.
I'll admit that I have several versions, but only because I had to buy them in the past few years because I didn't have anything. I had nothing.
Oh, like to get them back, kind of, to own your own copies.
I was just commenting on this today with my partner and I were talking, and I was telling her that my friend Eric Paul, who sang for Airborne Radar, is currently trying to get all of the Airborne Radar material that he did, like variants and everything, and like the whole catalog. Because when he was in the band, he's like, "Well, I don't need any of this. I'm in the band and that's fine." And that's always the attitude I had. I didn't have anything. So I'll occasionally would like run across a 7-inch or like a variant or a tour variant or something of the first 7-inch at like Armageddon Shop or something back home. And then I would buy it, like, cause I didn't have the fucking records. It was like, I'm on this record. I don't need to own this. And in hindsight, it's like, that was so goddamn stupid that I have like I don't have any representation of, like, I don't own a copy of You Won't Get What You Want. I don't have that record. I don't know why I don't do it.
I mean, some people just don't like having to lug shit around, especially if I don't know if you're a vinyl person. Like if you have your own record collection, you care about records and stuff.
I do. Like, yeah.
But yeah, some people are just like, it just takes up so much space, like I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as much a nuisance for me. I mean, I have a lot of records, but there are certainly people with far more records than me, and I don't get them out of books. But I'm not really attached to things that in that way. Where last year I moved and I got rid of like 2/3 of my books, and I just I thought, well, they're just books. I've read them. I got to move on with my life. This isn't so. And I mean, I have a lot of records, and like if something happened to them, it's just like all right, well, they're gone, and that's all right with me. I mean, I'm not really that worried about it. But the books I've had published now, and where I have things published, and the records I've been making, I do want to be better about holding on to that shit, because it is like a representation of something like very
little time capsule.
Yeah. I mean, it's like very important to me at these moments in my life, and not everyone gets to do that. Not everybody has they worked at UPS for 10 years ago, like a plaque or something. Like, who gives a shit about that? Like, there's really nothing. It's not interactive, and it's really nice that I have work that I've done that is, pick it up and listen to it and read it and that's a great feeling in a not like ego stroking way, and like a really nice feeling that creating art is just that people have an experience with it that's like very much their own, and to be responsible for creating something that people can have a really intense emotional connection to is like, that's amazing. That's really incredible to me. And so, yeah, I really appreciate everything I've put together, and that people put my records out and my books out, and like, listen to me yammer on about some fucking like a podcast about like my stupid bullshit. Like that's just like, it's crazy that anybody cares. Like I really dig that. And I'm really thankful, especially that I feel that my life has been like totally fucking crazy and you know, probably more bad than good, certainly. So like I'm happy that I'm just being alive right now is pretty incredible. So
right. Yeah.
You know.
Well, I'm glad you're alive.
Yeah, me too, man. I don't know. Death seems pretty boring. I mean, there's certainly days where I don't know if I think, man, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Life is hard, man. But death just seems so fucking boring.
I'll say. So I know we could do this all day. I'm trying to think of other things I could hit you with before. I mean, I was actually curious though, because, you know, obviously we just worked together putting out this poetry book. At what age in your life did you become interested in poetry? Was that pretty early on? No,
I didn't. I was always writing lyrics to songs that didn't exist. So I suppose I could argue that I had always been writing in a sense. And, you know, lyrics can often be poetic and that's always been a crossover for me, even now, where I had, I just recorded a song a couple weeks ago, and it was just words I had written. I had like put in the notes in my phone, and I thought like, well, I don't know what to do with these. I guess I'll have a song someday. But like the Virgin on the self-titled album, Daughter's self-titled record, was a poem I had, and I repurposed it and reworked it and turned it into lyrics for the song. So, you know, like that Paul Wears a Hat of Fire. I was like writing about this guy that was in a bar I was sitting in. I was just drinking by myself and reading, and I started writing about this guy, Paul, used to come to this bar. Oh shit, I probably just unveiled of something very mysterious. Who is Paul? I just said, there you go. I've always tried to avoid saying who Paul is.
It's a first ever exclusive.
Right. But I was always writing and interested in lyrics, probably because I couldn't play an instrument. So but I didn't start reading poetry until like I was 19 or so, or 20 maybe. Mm-hmm. And I was dating a woman who had me read or she was borrowing from someone, Charles Bukowski's Love is a Dog from Hell.
Sure.
And so this was 98 or 99 maybe, or 98. And I was like really interested. Like, you know, I was intimidated by poetry. I thought it was snooty, and you were going to be forced to analyze in a way. Everything means something else. And it was nice to kind of read this like blue collar version. Bukowski's just talking about, you know, his day or some shit, you know, and
his day and fucking.
Right. Yeah. Which at that time I was like, this guy's cool. But
it's I feel like anyone who even tries poetry, that book is on their shelf. Certainly,
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, when he's good, he's great, and when he's not, he's not. You know, but you know, interestingly, as I've gotten older, like the stuff that I really like is kind of the later part of his writing experience, where it's far more, you know, contemplative and thoughtful and self-analyzing, as opposed to like kind of self-aggrandizing, which is what he just sort of did for a long time. But like, I think there's like all kinds of great stuff. And the more I'm reading, the more I'm figuring out how I write, you know, because to have a book published, like, you know, a few years ago, Permanent Sleep published a collection of my poetry, and it was stuff I had written. They were like, you know, I said before, like songs without homes and things I had written when I was, you know, in some like alcoholic haze where I felt like, this is what writing is. Like, I'm a writer. I get drunk and fall asleep with sleep in my shoes. I'm an artist, you know, like that kind of bullshit. And I sort of assembled all of that stuff that I had written through my early 20s. And because I wanted to be like, once I started reading poetry, I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be like a poet. But I didn't really know what any of that meant. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't finish high school, you know. So I had no knowledge, no education, right. And I had no understanding of poetry and an analysis, and it was sort of beyond me. And so I just thought like, well, I've read Bukowski, so and I've read some of the Beats, and I've read Alan Kaufman, and I have with the Outlaw Bible of American Poetry. So I know what poetry is, and I'll write that shit. And it's just like, it was garbage. And when I look back at that first book, I can see that I was just like trying to be a poet. Like I was writing poems that this is what a poem's supposed to be, and this is how it's. And that's why I'm like super proud of like what we just did together with Dan, like you and I and Dan, like putting this Moving Windows out is just, it feels like the most genuine representation of my writing now, is where I'm not, I've abandoned things and like punctuation and I'll make up a word if I want, if something isn't fitting. Like I kind of feel like, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but I'm a singer in a band, so obviously I have a huge ego. So I feel like I have a style that's mine, I think, when I'm reading what I've been writing the past 2 years or 3 years, where I start to feel like, yeah, I can just sit down and start writing, and it'll clearly be mine, and it won't be like I'm trying to write like William Carlos Williams, and I obviously am not good enough to do that. So, yeah, and it's like being young, being older and trying to do that. It isn't any different than being young and playing. Like when we were writing songs, we were like, this sounds like an Overcast song. This is good. Like we were just trying to replicate the shit we knew, because we really weren't sure who we were, or what our identities were as musicians or artists or whatever we were. And it took a long time to get there. And as we age, it like continues to evolve, where you can hear Canada songs and that's whatever the hell it is, and compared to you get what you want, it's like it's something else, and we're like always just rediscovering who we are, because we continue to evolve as people. And so right now, to look at my work and feel like, oh, my writing is clearly my writing now. It took a long time to get there. When I stopped focusing on lyrical content and started like focusing on my writing standing by itself and being completely on its own, it feels good.
All of that makes perfect sense. I feel like poetry also allows you to be clumsy, like, yeah, certainly I like when I read back on stuff I've been working on, I feel like it's several different voices constantly, and I don't know if I'll ever have like a straight structure that I'm comfortable with, because I don't really ever. I'm with you. I didn't study it or anything like that, and I think the ego in me, similar to as you just said, it's like I sing in a band, so I clearly can write poetry. It's like I don't know that's. I would be embarrassed next to a genuine author poet type person, but right. It's like but I think that you and I and whoever else who feels they want to write, like we're allowed to have the freedom to express ourselves. Like
yeah.
And I think that's kind of what we're all trying to do. But as not even just me being a person putting it out and being a bit of a salesperson, but yeah, I have your old book. You were kind enough to send it to me, and I do really enjoy it. It's A Sea Above the Pains of Our Youth, and I definitely read it several times, and I was excited to work with you on this new book. But I'm with you, like a lot of the stuff that you've written in this little collection I've read several times. It's a handful of poems, so it's a pretty easy, quick read. But obviously, touring gives me a bit of extra love for this book too, because there's little references that you've made that you're like, well, that makes perfect sense. I think the poem Overnight too was like the ultimate for me, because especially I don't sleep very much on tour. I'm always night drive guy. Always night drive guy. Yeah. So yeah, it's weird how you get the second wind as soon as the sun starts to come up. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm just gonna ride it out until we eventually get to our destination. But
it's a strange experience. Yeah, like
it really is.
Just touring in general can be really bizarre. And if you're trying to, I think it could have been disastrous if I tried to capture it in like a literal sense, or tried to paint a picture of what it was, and more so like I've like really embraced sort of an abstract approach to writing now. Like, and I I have like Robert Creeley to thank for that, or like, or Robert Bly, like poets that are just there's so much left to the reader to just kind of decide what's happening and how they feel about it, and it took a while for me to decide that you don't like the reader doesn't really have to know what I'm talking about or understand my experience or have had my experience. So, but it's great that I mean, you and I have both toured, so if you have like you look at it through like a different lens, like what I've written, and as I've read, like you've sent me your work too. So like I mean, I think it's great. It's like a mutual admiration, and and I think we both understand that like we don't need people to interpret the things that we want them to. Like I'm happy I wrote it, and it means what it means to me, and whatever you get out of it is if you get anything, then I couldn't be happier.
That's completely how I feel. And even though like, I'm not going to say that I understood I was trying to, I won't claim that I understood every single aspect of a lot of these poems, but like the lines that hit me where I was like, yeah, I get where he's coming from with this or things like that. I mean, Jim, I don't know if you ever liked Jim Carroll poems at all.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, he's someone he was one of the first poets that I ever connected to, and I mean every other sentence is completely different than the last, and a lot of times you're like, I don't
fever
know,
dream,
I don't know what the fuck any of this is about, but it's you get sort of enthralled in it, and it's like even though this poem was 8 lines, you're taken on such a journey for even 2 of them. You're just like, I don't know what the fuck this is about, but like it's interesting, and I think that's all anyone could ever really hope for,
Yeah, absolutely. It just needs to like I don't want to read something and sort of be told how I'm supposed to feel about it. I don't like. I mean, if I'm reading, nonfiction or history or something based like that, like of course I give me the facts and because that's what I need here. But if I'm reading fiction or poetry or whatever, it's like I'm not here to follow or adhere to some kind of guideline or kind of any sort of strict direction, and just let me see how I feel about this and hope for the best.
The question I like to ask, and it's sometimes a hard one to come up with the right answer, but I was curious if you can remember the first time where you felt like you were doing the thing you've been working so hard towards as a musician, as a writer, anything. If there's anything that stands out to you as like, wow, I'm actually doing it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there are a lot of small moments like that where we had flown out to play Hellfest in France, and a couple of us were staying at this like very old, really beautiful. I mean, the grounds were it was just extraordinary, and it must have been this old kind of I don't know, French castle or whatever the hell it was. And I was just walking the grounds by myself, and I just thought, this is amazing. Like I grew up on welfare. I had all kinds of terrible shit happen to me growing up. Like I have there's no reason for me to be here. And now I'm going to go play to, I mean, I don't know how many fucking thousands and thousands of people we played at. It was unbelievable. And, there are moments like that are just surreal that I think like, what am I doing here? Like, how did this happen? And it's even just like just putting out this work that you just released for Dan and I. It's something where I think, wow, yeah, this is amazing. This is all I want to do. And it happens. I don't know if I'd say frequently, but I do try to always be aware of like my surroundings and where I am, and especially like the that last go with You Won't Get What You Want, where we had played for years in basements and no one gave a shit. We always got like tepid reviews, if we got reviews at all. We never made top 10 lists. We never on the cover of anything, and we never sold out our shows. And then it was just. We started hitting like sellout after sellout after sellout after sellout, and like the rooms were getting bigger, and then we were like on a bus, and I just thought, this is unbelievable. This doesn't seem right. Like this is like such a strange experience, and I'm just trying to be aware, and especially now that I'm sober, that I am just want to be grateful for everything that happens and everything that comes along, and that I get to sit around and like write poetry or go somewhere to be like, I have to go to work for a couple of days. And that means like going to a studio and like singing and writing and working and like collaborating with people. Like that's fucking amazing. That there's no singular moment where I thought, oh, I've made it, or like I'm on the right path, because life is so up and down. There are times where I just think everything is wrong. I've done everything wrong. I fucking ruined my life. And then there are other times where I think, yeah, this is, if all of this bullshit didn't happen to me, if I had a good father, if I wasn't like abused or neglected and all my shit, like that shit didn't happen, I'd be in a different place. And, I have like 2 boys and I love them so much. And like, I've like put out a respectable body of work and, as far as art, and I feel good about it. And so,
yeah,
the moment is not infrequent, not frequent, but I just am aware of it when I need to be.
That's a lovely answer. It's wild, like
it's a long-winded answer.
No, it's a lovely answer though. And I don't know, as an outsider, as just a music appreciator, as someone who's always liked your band, like I remember, the first time I saw you was at Hellfest in 2003 or 4, whatever. Whenever you played.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah. I was front row. If there's photos from that, you can see my gangly long hair ass. Just right. Yeah, and
it was ungodly hot.
God,
it was unbelievable. That heat and then the dust everywhere. That was like an early moment where we went in that tent and it was packed. We thought, we were like, whoa, people are into this. People are kind of like, this is cool. Yeah.
Again, because I don't think Canada Songs was out yet, so I think the 7-inch was still only out maybe at that point.
I think we had played because the video that went on the DVD was like I think Nurse, that version. So I think we had. Oh, okay. I think we had the record. The record must have been out, I think, at that point.
Okay. Yeah. So seeing you there, and then I saw you throughout the years because you guys played tours that it's funny. I've talked to like Wes in the past about American Nightmare sort of surviving the like very metalcore world while still staying very much American Nightmare, but like getting thrown on a lot of those tours and stuff like that in like the early 2000s. So like I can't remember what tour it maybe was, but I feel like I saw you guys with like, I don't know if it was like a band like The Bled or something like that. Yeah, maybe is that accurate?
We did that the American Nightmare tour. It was there were 2 legs, and the first was we opened, and then Cursed played The Most Precious Blood, and then American Nightmare, and we did like half the country that way, and then there was like a week off, and then the second leg started, and we opened, and then the Bled played, and Starkweather, and
weird.
No, Fairweather.
Fairweather. As I say, Starkweather.
Fairweather played. No, not Starkweather. And in Fairweather, I think left the tour eventually because they were just getting such a terrible response.
I think I saw that at like the Whiskey or something like that.
Yeah, they did like most of the West Coast, and then I think by the time we got to Seattle, they were like, "Yeah, we can't do this. We're all done."
Sure, but so it's like I saw Daughters like a good amount of times. I was even at we don't have to get into it, but I was even at that Knitting Factory show. You bad boy. So like. I always thought the band was great, and I loved everything about the band. But like when I then saw you come back and play that show at the Echo, once the new record was coming out or whatever, I was just like, this is a really shitty thing to say, and I feel embarrassed to say it, but like it was the first time I watched a set where I didn't look at my phone once. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard to like be that captivated by a performance. Yeah. And again, sorry, blowing smoke, but like I remember that I walked out of that show. I went with my buddy Matt, who works at Epitaph, and I was just like, dude, what the fuck? Like that, that was such a nice breath of fresh air. Like I just, and again, we hadn't known each other or anything like that really. So like, it was just, I was so psyched. And then when you came back and then headlined at the Regent, packed show, it was just, you know, as someone who's just followed the band as long as I have and like been an admirer and now a friend, like I'm real stoked for you and the band and like how far everything has come. It's like, it's really nice to see that, like, and also see that like, yo, a band can like fully break on like their 4th or 5th record still. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, it's not impossible.
It's hard to, you know, I mean, you take 8 years off and then come back and have like the biggest success we've ever had. Like that's, I don't know if that's a feat or there was a fear that it was just going to be like a cult thing where we came back, did a bunch of shows. People would be like, oh yeah, let's go see your daughters play. I haven't seen them in 8 years. Or people will say like, oh, I'm 21. I didn't think I'd ever get to see them. And then we thought, well, we'll see how it goes. We'll make this record. And yeah, it's been crazy ever since. And
right.
It's great, man. I'm so I couldn't be happier. You know,
it's been a real fun ride. And now I'm happy to say I have a little tiny connection to it with getting to do this book with you. So like, yeah, this was a blast. I really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for everything.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Jeremy. Like, yeah, man, you're a good man. You're a good friend. And thanks so much.
I appreciate it. All right, but I'll let you go. See ya. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe or follow the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen. And if you can spare a moment to give us a rating and review on Apple, it helps the show gain more visibility, and that can make all the difference. Thank you, and I'll see you again next week.